Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's workshop. Today, we are going to be discussing the dark triad and intimate partner violence, and we're going to look at the trait-specific pathways from perpetration to legal outcomes. All right, so I just wanted to do a little disclaimer for this workshop. So today we will be discussing sensitive topics such as intimate partner violence, or IPV for short. And if this topic is uncomfortable for you at any time, or if you choose just not to engage at all in today's workshop, that is completely okay. Please take care of yourself and step away if you need, and we'll catch you for the next workshop. All right, so a little introduction. Hi, guys. My name is Rebecca Pucci, and I am currently a fourth year honors psychology student here at Carleton with a concentration in forensic psychology. So, this workshop for today is pretty much based on my honors research. So, it plans to examine how three malevolent personality traits, known as the dark triad, follow distinct trait-specific pathways that uniquely contribute to IPV behaviors and shape legal outcomes. All right, so for my target audience, who have I chosen for today's workshop? Well, it would be you guys. So, fourth year psychology students and also emerging professionals in both forensic and clinical psychology fields. And why is this? So, many of you may engage with risk assessment, concepts within your coursework, and may encounter intimate partner violence cases in your future professional roles. So, of course, understanding offender risk and behavioral patterns is very crucial for developing effective research-informed responses. All right, so we're going to head into a little bit of background. So, what exactly is intimate partner violence? So, intimate partner violence is defined as any behavior within an intimate relationship that causes physical, sexual, or psychological harm. Intimate partner violence, of course, may involve, but is not limited to, physical violence, sexual coercion, psychological abuse, controlling behaviors such as isolation and monitoring their partners, and cyber intimate partner violence. All right, so to continue, we're going to look at some prevalence. So, why is intimate partner violence so urgent? Well, nearly 1 in 3 women experience physical or sexual intimate partner violence throughout their lifetime, and it's estimated that around 1 in 5 men are predicted to experience intimate partner violence as well. And when we're looking at these statistics, it really raises big issues and really calls for dire attention and our need to focus in on this urgent health crisis. And women also experience a disproportionate amount of physical and psychological harm. So, of course, this is extremely important to focus in on because consequences for intimate partner violence include many short-term and long-term effects that include things such as post-traumatic stress disorder, depressive disorders and anxiety disorders, substance use disorders, and re-victimization. So, becoming a victim to this type of perpetration multiple times. All right, so what are the key points that I want us to take away from today's workshop and that we're going to really be addressing? So, I want us to all understand that intimate partner violence is not limited to physical injury. So, non-physical forms of abuse are often less visible, underreported, and more difficult to detect since we can't overtly see them. Yet, they can still cause significant and lasting psychological harms on the victim. And it is also very important to note that intimate partner violence is rarely an isolated incident, and it often reflects persistent behavioral patterns that vary in severity, visibility, and motivation. All right, so why personality traits matter? Well, personality traits in general reflect stable patterns of thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. So these patterns tend to persist across situations and over time, making personality highly relevant for understanding things like recidivism or reoffending behaviors, risk, and responsivity to intervention or treatment. Okay, so why the dark triad? Well, the dark triad captures subclinical malevolent traits that actually exist on a continuum rather than as fixed clinical diagnoses. And this is important because we can see that they're both present in the community and forensic samples, and that allows us to generalize our findings to a much broader population and not only those that fall within these fixed clinical diagnoses. Of course, the dark triad includes three subclinical traits of psychopathy, Machiavellianism, and narcissism. So, of course, while they all exist within the dark triad, they do show some overlap. Research actually suggests that they are associated with distinct intimate partner violence pathways, with different behavioral patterns and legal outcomes. All right, so let's head into activity one. So, this is called Identify the Pattern. All right, so for this activity, I'd like you to match each intimate partner violence indicator to the pathway it most closely reflects. So, for example, if we see the first one here, repeated physical abuse, lack of remorse, and persistence over time, you would either attribute it to something that might be more underestimated or underreported, or one that might be more visible and easy to detect within legal systems. And of course, just a note for everybody, there are no right answers or wrong answers at this point. I just want to get our brains kind of starting to work and become familiar with the topics of discussion for today. So I have read the first one. So that is repeated physical abuse, lack of remorse, and persistence over time. So you can take some time and put it towards whichever one you think it might reflect. And then we're going to move on to the second one. All right. So the second one we have here is arrogance and entitlement and emotional outburst triggered by perceived rejection or criticism. All right, and finally, we have strategic manipulation, exploitation, and control without physical violence. All right, so once we have all those answers, we're just going to move on. Okay, so research actually often shows that these differences that we just looked at and connected often align with specific dark triad pathways. All right. So now we're going to get into the trait-specific intimate partner violence pathways, which include psychopathy, Machiavellianism, and narcissism. All right. So we are going to begin with psychopathy. So some core features to identify somebody with psychopathy would be some interpersonal maladaptive features, including deceit and grandiosity, affective features, including lack of empathy and remorse, lifestyle features, including impulsivity and irresponsibility, and antisocial features. So that would be poor behavioral controls. So, intimate partner violence patterns often reflect physical aggression, increased visibility of violence, severe psychological and sexual harm, high frequency and severity, and a strong association with recidivism, so those reoffending behaviors. And of course, legal implications for this may actually increase the likelihood of detection and conviction just because the abuse is overtly violent and more visible and detectable within legal contexts. So they also do experience lower treatment responsiveness depending on the type of psychopathy, and strong predictor for violent recidivism. So again, not only within intimate relationships, but in general. And of course, poor outcomes under conditional release. So there's not a lot of optimism about psychopathic intimate partner violence offenders being reintegrated into society without reoffending. So overall, psychopathic intimate partner violence tends to be highly visible, stable, and difficult to rehabilitate. All right, so moving on, our second trait is Machiavellianism. So, some core features of Machiavellianism include this coldness, strategic manipulation, moral disengagement, and goal-orientated behaviors. And for IPV pattern, they show a lot of association with psychological abuse, cyber intimate partner violence, coercive sexual tactics. And I'm just going to note this, coercive tactics means more of a psychological effect being perpetrated on the victim than anything physical. So that ties into more of the psychological abuse and then minimal physical violence. So quite different from psychopathy as it demonstrates more covert violence than overt. All right, so legal implications for a Machiavellian perpetrator include more difficult to detect, increased willingness to engage in judicial and victim manipulation. So within a court setting, they are more willing and likely to attempt to manipulate the victim in the situation and also the individuals within the court. And of course, this may lead to them being underreported in convictions and in the legal system, just because you cannot physically see a lot of the abuse that is being perpetrated by these perpetrators. All right, so overall, Machiavellian intimate partner violence may bypass detection due to the harm being primarily psychological and covert. All right, and finally, our third trait is narcissism. So, core features for this include the two subtypes. So, we have grandiose narcissism, which is characterized by dominance, entitlement, and a strong sense of superiority over their partner. And then vulnerable narcissism, which is associated with shame, insecurity, and a distrust in others, including their partner. Okay, so the IPV pattern for this would be ego-driven aggression, of course, because we have two different subtypes that we are really looking at, and it's driven by which subtype that the person really presents. And psychological and cyber intimate partner violence were associated with both of them, and there were actually stronger intimate partner violence associations in general for the vulnerable subtype. And of course, similar to Machiavellianism, narcissistic intimate partner violence perpetrators did present minimal physical intimate partner violence, so more covert, psychologically manipulative behaviors. All right, so legal implications for narcissistic IPV include a charm and confidence that a grandiose narcissist may portray. They may reduce perceived risk within legal settings. They also tend to engage in moderate judicial manipulation, so they're more willing as well to manipulate individuals within legal contexts. And the risk varies depending on the subtype. So, for grandiose narcissists, this is associated with persistent criminality, so recidivism in general, while vulnerable narcissism is associated with more increase in intimate partner violence. So, that's important to note for sure. So overall, we can see with narcissism, narcissistic IPV is dependent on subtype. So whether they're really showcasing more signs of a grandiose narcissist or a vulnerable narcissist, where risk is obscured by psychological manipulation. All right, that was a lot of content that we just went over. I hope you guys are still with me. We're going to move on to activity two. So this is match the pattern. We just looked at the three dark triad traits, and now I'm going to see if we remember anything about them and if we can connect them to some pathways. All right, so based on what you learned, I want you to try and match each intimate partner violence pattern to the most likely dark triad trait. All right, so pattern one is repeated physical abuse, increasing severity, lack of remorse, and prior criminal history. So this pattern could represent either Machiavellianism, psychopathy, or narcissism. All right, moving on to the second pattern, we have monitoring phone or social media, isolating partner from family and friends, and minimal physical violence. All right, and for pattern three, we have anger triggered by perceived rejection, hostility following a threat to ego, and guilt tripping. I did throw in a couple of things that I did not mention in the previous slides just to see if we can connect things that we are familiar with and kind of add different things that can help us build on these profiles. All right, if you need time to pause, go ahead. I'm going to move over to the answer slide, and I want to make sure that I'm not um, moving too fast. All right, so for pattern one, that would represent psychopathy. Just because we were talking about that overt violence, I'll go back to the slide. Increasing severity, lack of remorse, and this is all associated with psychopathic intimate partner violence. And for pattern two, we have Machiavellianism. As we can see, it had these monitoring and isolating behaviors, which a lot of Machiavellians typically engage in just because they're very psychologically manipulative, and again, minimal physical violence because they like to engage in that more covert psychological abuse. And then finally, we have narcissism. So, especially the vulnerable subtype, anger triggered by perceived rejection, hostility following a threat to ego, and guilt tripping. And this is aligned more with the vulnerable subtype, just because vulnerable narcissists tend to be more reactive than proactive, like grandiose narcissist. Okay, and now let's move to another activity, activities back to back. This is called Can You Spot the Dark Triad Trait? And this is very interesting because while I was doing my original research, I stumbled across this study and found it very interesting. Of course, this activity is meant to highlight the limits of our visual judgment and how the dark triad traits cannot be reliably identified from appearances alone. So keep that in mind. Okay, so on the screen, we have six faces, and based on what you learned today, I want you to try and identify which dark triad trait you see and whether one may be low scoring or high scoring. So, what I mean by that is we have one, two, three, and there's two pictures per number. One of them within the number will be a low scoring individual, and the other one will be a high scoring individual. So, one, two, and three can either be a psychopath, a Machiavellian perpetrator, or a narcissistic perpetrator. You can pause this video, take your time, and while you're watching or continuing to listen to me, I want you to think about what characteristics you're looking for or what is helping you to identify a perpetrator of Machiavellian traits or psychopathic traits? Do they have more dominance? Are you looking for someone with a lack of emotional response? Just some things to keep in mind as you're looking at these faces and trying to apply what we've kind of learned about each personality trait. All right. So if you guys have all your answers written down, or if you're still working on it, feel free to pause. But we're going to move over to the actual results. All right. So every photo that is on our left side is actually the low scoring individuals, while the ones on the right side actually reflect the high scoring individuals. Of course, overall, the dark triad traits cannot be reliably identified from faces alone, and by recognizing personality as a meaningful factor, we can strengthen intimate partner violence perpetration, detection, conviction, and even treatment outcomes. So, what can we take from this research? Well, I think it's pretty crucial that we move beyond this one size fits all dark triad model and intimate partner violence models and moving towards ones that improve detection for more covert forms of intimate partner violence, as intimate partner violence ranges from many different types. It's not just physical, it's psychologically abusive, emotional, and even in the modern day through cyber means, so through technology. And of course, developing treat specific interventions, so interventions that are catered towards the offender. So this would be matching treatment type and intensity to the personality trait, and also to be very cautious of manipulation in legal contexts, because these more psychologically abusive individuals do tend to engage in more manipulative behaviors, which in turn can affect legal proceedings. All right, so conclusion and key takeaways. So the dark triad traits are associated with distinct intimate partner violence pathways, and each pathway, of course, differs from perpetration behavior to legal outcomes. So, trait-specific understanding may actually help improve victim safety, risk assessment, legal decision making, and intervention strategies for these perpetrators. All right, guys, we made it to the end. Thank you so much for tuning in with me today to be in this workshop with me. I really hope you learned something or can take something away from this. And I hope you learned something about the dark triad and a little bit more about intimate partner violence. All right, I'm going to see you on the next one. Bye, guys.